What makes the liturgy divine? We often hear this phrase, the divine liturgy is the work of the people. The word liturgy means common work or common action. We as the church, by definition, are officially gathered as those specifically chosen to perform a task. However, if we just focus on liturgy and our work, where's the divine? There's much more to it than us and our work. You might be expecting me to talk about the sound, which is our work as church musicians, and how the music gives wing to the text to make it come alive in a divine way. I could speak about achieving the best possible sound, developing a system of liturgical continuity, and how the liturgy is organically spaced into parts of a whole. The liturgy of the catechumens and the liturgy of the faithful. Well, we could further break that down into 6 sections, naturally grouping our musical selections for minimum pitch giving and key changes, so as not to be an interruption into dialogue and prayer, but logically selecting music that flows with continuity, like this. Blessed is the kingdom through the little entrance. Triparia through the gospel. Trubicim and the great entrance. The Ectenia of the Naphra through the Megillonarian. Liturgy of the Lord's Prayer through the communion of the faithful. And then Thanksgiving through the dismissal. So you got that? Okay, that's good. But
why are them
no, I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to make that the focus. That's not where we'll put our energy right now. It's important, but we've got time to look at the mechanical parts at other times throughout our stay here. So let's step outside our routine, our mechanical routine as church musicians, and let's look beyond our notes, theory, blend, and dynamics. Those elements are our areas of expertise as singers. They're all ingredients that work together to create a beautiful sound. Sound is the comfort zone for all of us. And theology is quite familiar to us, some to a greater degree, but we all share a foundation. I want you to move past these individual senses, and we're going to take a look at the big picture. So now let's talk about the word divine. I'm going to pick these up because I think that bothered Father Elias. Here we go. We're back on track and focused. We're going to talk about the word divine. The word divine means of, from, or like God. Connected with God. Supremely good. God-like. Heavenly. Celestial. Better than perfect. Better than perfect. It's dazzling and beautiful that we are participants in the liturgy that is of God, from God, heavenly, and better than perfect. It goes on perpetually in the kingdom, and we participate in it on earth. He joins earth to heaven. In the prayer of the cherubic hymn, the priest says, "For thou thyself art he that offers and is offered, that accepts and is distributed, O Christ our God." Divine. It's an unfathomable connection, but yet it is comprehensible to the mind in small snippets. Do you suppose that's why the divine liturgy that goes on perpetually in the kingdom is something that humanity can only bear to waltz in and out of? Maybe even for just a few minutes or seconds at a time, or maybe just a few minutes in an entire week. Holy, 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 Lord of Sabaoth, heaven and earth are full of thy glory. Hosanna in the highest. Blessed is he that comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest. We get a taste. We get a morsel. We get a snippet. And the Lord knew all of this. The mind can only bear so much. That's why all our senses are engaged. We see, we feel, we smell, we hear, we taste, and not all simultaneously. So as the week goes on, we'll be filled with knowledge. We'll hear many speakers approach the topic of the divine liturgy, everyone from a different angle. Tonight, I want to talk about what we see and what we don't see, and how that's something that is so divine. When we recite the creed as one body, we say, "I believe in one God, the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, and of all things visible and invisible." The church visible is the church on earth, living in complete union with the whole body of the church, with Christ as the head. The church has abiding within her living fullness, Christ and the grace of the Holy Spirit, but the bigger picture, that fullness is only manifest inasmuch as it is pleasing to God, visible and invisible. This union of the church, visible and invisible, is true and absolute. Those who are alive on earth, those who have finished their earthly course, those who, like the angels, were not created for a life on earth, those in future generations who have not yet begun their earthly course, are all united together in one church, in one and the same grace of God. This is what makes the liturgy divine. When we're in church, we're in the midst of something very rich, a full experience, joining heaven and earth, visible and invisible. We are truly there with all those who have gone before us. We hear this: prophets, patriarchs, saints, bishops, priests, parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, spouses, siblings, children, grandchildren, godchildren, family, and friends. We may or may not see them, but we know they are there. We worship, we enter in, we participate in that very liturgy that goes on perpetually. It is our union with Christ and his church. It is real. It is divine. It connects us with God in a supremely good and perfect way. We feel the presence of loved ones no longer living on earth in a very real and profound way. They are there. We feel the presence of those whom we see depicted in icons, often penetrating to the depths of our souls. We know this is where we want and need to be, with one God, Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, and of all things visible and invisible. This is living the liturgy divine. I'd like to close by reading a passage, and bear with me. It's sort of a long passage, and I know there's a lot of closed eyes in the crowd. And that's because I'm sure you're, pondering every word. But I'm going to read a passage from this book called Jayber Crow. Now, I'm going to give you a little background. Jayber Crow is the central character in a series of 8 novels written by Wendell Berry. It's set in the fictional town of Port William, Kentucky. Jayber Crow lost his parents as a very small child, at about 4 years old, and he was raised by his Aunt Cordy and Uncle Othie. When they too passed away in his childhood, he was sent off to a Kentucky orphanage. After growing to manhood, he briefly considered a vocation in the ministry, but then decided to return to that ancestral home, Port William, where he became the town barber and a volunteer janitor at the small Port William church. Like bartenders, the town barber listens to all his customers' conversations and stories. So soon, Jayber Crow is drawn from that orphanage isolation sort of mindset back into an intimate community. On Friday afternoons, he goes to this little town church to clean it, and that's where this passage takes place. Things about my janitorship I liked without qualification. I liked the church when it was empty. When I would go there to do my work and would come in out of the bustle and stir and would shut the door, and the quiet would come in around me. And I would see the light falling unbroken on the scarred and carved and much repainted old pews. Well, it was lovely. I would work as quietly as I could so as to be in the quiet without breaking it. Coming there soon after dinner, I would sometimes get sleepy, like you guys here. And then I would lie down on the floor and take a nap. I would just go dead away for maybe 20 minutes and would wake up in wonder, rested, at one with the quiet and the light still the same. My best duty was ringing the bell on Sunday morning. The bell rope came down into the vestibule through a hole bored in the ceiling. The rope was frayed where it had worked back and forth through the hole for 100 years. And the hole was worn lopsided. Pulling the rope always felt awkward at the start, never the way I expected. You would feel the weight of the bell as it began unresponsively to swing in its creaky bearings up in the steeple. You might have to swing it 2 or 3 times before the clapper would strike, and then it struck, dong. And then the sound of the clapper striking and the sound of the bell bloomed out in all directions over the countryside into all the woods and hollows. It was never easy for me to stop ringing the bell, so I delighted in that interval of pure sound between the clapper strokes. The bell, I thought, voiced the best sermon of the day. It included everything and in a way blessed it. What gave me the most pleasure of all was I was just going up there, whatever the occasion, and sitting down with the people. I always wished a little that the church was not a church, set off as it was behind its barriers of doctrine and creed, so that all the people of the town and the neighborhood might 2 or 3 times a week freely come there and sit down together. Though I knew perfectly well that in the actual world, any gathering would exclude some, and some would not consent to be gathered, and some, like me, would be outside even when inside. I like the naturally occurring silences. The one, for instance, just before the service began, and the other, the briefest imaginable, just after the last amen. Occasionally, a preacher would come who had a little bias toward silence, and then my attendance would become purposeful. At a certain point in the service, the preacher would ask that we observe a moment of silence. You could hear a little rustle as the people settled down into that deliberate cessation. And then the quiet was almost the quiet of the empty church, and it would come over us and unite us as we were not united even when singing. And the little sounds, maybe a bird's song from the outside world, would come into us, and we would completely hear it. But always too soon after, the preacher would become abashed. After all, he was being paid to talk, and start a prayer, and the beautiful moment would end. I would think again how I would like for us to all just go there from time to time and sit in silence. Maybe I am a Quaker of sorts, but I am told that the Quakers sometimes speak at their meetings. I would have preferred no talk, no noise at all. One day when I went up there to work, sleepiness overcame me, and I lay down on the floor behind the back pew to take a nap. Waking or sleeping, I couldn't tell which. I saw all the people gathered there who had ever been there. I saw them as I had seen them from that back pew, where I sat with Uncle Othie, who would not come in any further, while Aunt Cordy sang in the choir. And I saw them as I had seen them from the back pew on the Sunday just before. I saw them in all the times past and to come, all somewhere in their own time, and in all time and in no time. The cheerfully working and singing women, the men quiet or reluctant or shy, obviously they weren't Arabs, the weary, the troubled in spirit, the sick, the lame, the desperate, the dying, the little children tucked in the pews beside the elders, young married couples full of visions, and old men with their dreams, the proud parents with their children, the grandparents with tears in their eyes, the pair of young lovers attentive only to each other on the edge of the world, the grieving widows and widowers, the mothers and fathers of children newly dead, the proud, the humble, the attentive, the distracted. I saw them all. I saw the creases crisscrossed on the backs of the women's necks and the men's necks, their work-thickened hands, the Sunday dresses faded with washing. They were just there. They said nothing, and I said nothing. I seemed to love them. I seemed to love them all with a love that was mine merely because it included me. When I came to myself again, my face was wet with tears. My friends, that is the liturgy. That is divine. That is that rich thing, that gift that we have. Joining earth to heaven. Thank you.